If I haven't pointed it out yet, my message today is coming from this little book, It's Too Late. And it's right, it's not too late. Thank you. I'll sit down now. You come on up. Not too late. It's not too late. The book is not too late. There we go. Not too late. Changing the climate story from despair to possibility. So, on this Earth Day, frankly, I think we gather with more mixed emotions. There's obviously love of this beautiful but yet fragile planet, but I think there's some grief, and I hadn't really realized it until I started looking into this topic, grief about what has been lost sort of already. And if we're honest, sometimes there's a quiet despair, or in my case, maybe not so much, so quiet anxiety about what lies ahead. We do live in a time when the climate crisis is no longer abstract. It's here, it's now, and sometimes it's quite personal. We see it in much stronger storms, especially you've gone through a few of them lately. Shifting seasons. Why do we have 80-degree days in March? I heard on the way down here today that March was the warmest month ever in the United States, in the warmest year ever. Vanishing species and communities that are already bearing the brunt of disruption. And yet today, I want to offer us something that will make us feel, that may feel both simple and radical. It's not too late. See, I said it right that time. It's not too late. So the book, Not Too Late, Changing the Climate Story from Despair to Possibility. I picked it because actually in the Soul Matters packet this month, there was some quotes by Rebecca Solnit, one of the editors here, and I kind of researched her and found that this book had come out and it looked quite interesting. And I thought it was a perfect nexus of the theme this month, Embracing Possibility and Earth Day. So I kind of geared up for this today. The book is actually a collection of essays which are curated by two women who deeply are immersed in this work and have been for years. Rebecca Solnit is a longtime climate and human rights activist. She serves on the board of Oil Change International and on the advisory boards of DANU, I think that's pronounced that way, and Third Act. And then the woman with the really unusual last name, Thelma Lutunatabua, is a digital storyteller and activist. She's worked in various roles in support of global climate justice and human rights, and she currently works at the Solution Project. So it's split into 5 pretty short sections. It's a pretty easy read, and there's a lot of different essays from a lot of different points of view. So some of them are more technical, some of them are more emotional. So it was a good read. The 5 sections, the first one, it's called Join Us, and it's the two editors writing their introduction. And they have these great names for their essays called Difficult is Not the Same as Impossible, and Nothing is Inevitable. It goes then right into We Have the Solutions. And it's a section that goes on to talk about the progress that has been made since the first Earth Day in 1970, and to remind us that there's a lot of things that have been done and we can build on that. And then it goes into frameworks of possibility. And one of the essays in there that I liked the most was by Rebecca Solnit. It was called In Praise of Indirect Consequences. And she says there that by all of these people working on climate change created a lot more communities than we had before, crossing different segments of society. And then really pointed out that the new Green Deal, for example, was also a good deal for labor movement. So there's a lot of indirect consequences for this work. The next one was The Future We Want, and it's this blue sky, like this is where we want to go. And my favorite essay in there was one called A Love Letter from the Clean Energy Future by Marianne Hitt. And it basically is what it said. Somebody wrote it from the future saying, hey, at this point on 2030, you had made these changes and look what had happened. It was a really great way to talk about it. And then finally it ends with Take This With You, again by the editors. And Lutunatabua writes, she compares the struggle for climate change with her struggle getting pregnant and giving birth, with some miscarriages and missteps along the way, but the eventual birth of her son, which I'll come back to at the end. So my personal assessment of it is that it, like I said, an easy read. I found it insightful, gave me some things to think about, and frankly, at the end, it was hopeful. The hopefulness that the title is trying to convey was achieved. But I'm going to give you a little bit more about why I think it rang true for Unitarian Universalists. It reminds us that probably the most dangerous story we can tell is not that climate change is real any longer, but that it's already hopeless. And there's a lot of that going on right now. In a way, hopelessness could be considered more dangerous than even the destruction of climate change, at least in the short term, because it robs us of our humanity. We become paralyzed with regret, with anger, and with remorse, and our attitudes start shifting from we can do this to why bother? We're going to die anyway. Hopelessness disconnects us from our own agency, from our own power. And Unitarian Universalism, at its core, I think, is a faith that resists that kind of resignation. One of our shared values, and I've mentioned this before, is generosity, and I think of it as generosity of spirit. We have this unending hope that the world will ultimately become a better place for all, and that humans have the power and agency to do so. But then as I read through all of the essays, I said there's three clear shared values that come forward. One of them is we value equity. Of course, you've heard this a million times. We declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. But then you got to put a little hyphen in there and say, including those most vulnerable of climate harm. Interdependence is obvious. We honor the interdependent web of all existence and acknowledge our place in it. A truth that climate science now echoes with urgency. And I do know that Unitarian Universalists believe in science passionately. And then finally, transformation. If you look on the outside of our hymnal, it's referred to as our living tradition. It's a living tradition because we affirm that revelation is ongoing, that we could never believe that we have all the knowledge that we need. And so new understandings call us into new action. So embracing possibility, April's theme, let's explore what it means to embrace a climate story, not of despair, but of possibility. Now, I found basically 5 themes that kind of run through the book. Truth-telling, reclaiming hope, change is already happening, expand our understanding, and then ending with centering in love. So I'm going to go through all of those real briefly. Truth-telling. First, we must continue to insist on the truth and repeat it often. The climate crisis is real and it is serious, and there are losses already that cannot be undone. And there are thresholds we may cross. But the story doesn't end there. Not Too Late reminds us that climate change is not a single cliff we either fall off or avoid. It's a landscape of possibilities. Every fraction of a degree matters. Every action matters. And even every delay avoided matters, right? It's the minutia. This means that there's no point at which action becomes meaningless. Even now, especially now, what we do matters. And this reframes our moral responsibility. As a kid, I remember, especially after when Earth Day started, we were called to save the planet in this very absolute sense. And I think that's what's driven the despair, because we missed being able to completely save the planet. But that's not really what it's about. The Earth is going to keep rotating. It's going to keep going on in some form. It's taking care of itself for billions of years. We all know what is really at stake is the livability of this world for humans and countless other species for generations to come. And for the world as we have known it for millennia, which we thought was stable and a given for eternity, turns out it wasn't. We're called not to perfection, but to participation. The second one is reclaiming hope. We must reclaim hope not as a feeling, but as a practice. Hope in this sense, it's not optimism. It's not the belief that everything's going to turn out fine. Hope is the commitment to act in alignment with our values, regardless of the certainty of the outcome. We may not know the outcome in our lifetime, but we know that we are right. We know that what the right things are to do, and hope they will make a difference enough for our children and grandchildren to continue to inhabit this beautiful world. Rebecca Solnit writes about hope as something we do, not something we have. It's an orientation towards the future that says, the outcome is not yet written, and therefore my actions matter. Hope is not passive, it's active. It's a form of courage. And this sense of agency, I think, is fundamental and foundational to Unitarian Universalism. Number 3 is the change is already happening. The essays by contributing writers reinforce all the progress already made. We are not starting from ground zero. Around the world, and there's all these great essays, people are organizing, innovating, resisting, and reimagining. Communities are transitioning to renewable energy probably faster than we are here in the United States. Young people are leading movements for climate justice. Indigenous knowledge is guiding restoration and stewardship. Cities, organizations, and nations are making commitments that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. Yes, of course, the changes may be uneven and often end up being either incomplete, and they're often insufficient. But they're real. And however, the essays remind us that systems, no matter how entrenched, can shift. History's not static. It is always shaped by human choices. And our choices and what we value are included. The fourth theme in the book was expand our understanding. We need to know what counts as meaningful action and expand that. It's easy to feel small in the face of a global crisis. And we might ask ourselves, and I have asked myself, what difference does my recycling make anyway? My voting, my lifestyle choices? And the answer, of course, is none of these actions are sufficient on their own. I can't change the world on my own. But all of them are part of a larger ecosystem of change. Personal choices matter because they align our lives with our values. And collective action matters because it changes systems. And cultural shifts, I think this is the key, matter because they redefine what is possible. That's what the original Earth Day was about, a cultural shift. And all of the things that we have happened today came about after that. And just a reminder, there's no single way to engage. There is only the invitation to engage. We did an exercise, I think it was back in February, about what is your role in resistance? Same thing here. What is your role for engage? And it's very personal to you. And maybe this is where United actually plays a unique role. I do believe we already do. We're a place where people can come together not just to learn about the crisis, but to find meaning within it. To transform anxiety into purpose. To transform isolation into solidarity. We are and must continue to be a community of moral imagination. And then finally, centering it all in love. And it's more than a cliche. It is easy in conversations about climate to focus only on fear. Fear of loss, fear of catastrophe, and fear of the future. But I think we all know here that fear alone cannot sustain us. Just a reminder of what sustains us is love in all its forms. So we start with love for the earth, its beauty, its diversity, its mystery. Love for one another, and not just in this room, but especially those who are most impacted. And then love of future generations, the unborn, those we will never meet, but whose lives will be shaped by our choices now. Love is truly what makes all of this work sacred. And when we act out of love, we're not just trying to prevent harm, we are trying to nurture life. We are participating in something larger than ourselves, and that's when it always becomes spiritual work. So I'm going to end today reading you the final paragraphs of the book. It's the last essay by Lutunatabua. And I said she was struggling as they were writing this book and the conception of it in conceiving her own child and had a few miscarriages. So she writes this. My son was born 2 months after we turned in the first draft of this book. Like many great beginnings, his first moments were heralded by a group of competent women who ensured that he and I were safe as well as thriving and respected. Looking back on this essay and book from the realm of postpartum has reinforced the key lessons that surfaced in its creation. The first is we can't do this alone. Whether creating new life or whole new socioeconomic systems, teams of people all giving their talents are needed. Since giving birth, I have been surrounded by care, and this is how every emergence should be. The second is that this work has to be grounded in love. That doesn't mean the pursuit of climate justice will be easy and full of rainbows. Instead, like motherhood, love ensures continuity, that the difficult moments are made bearable and the bright moments nurture and sustain. Last, I am learning the importance of surrendering to my new ways of being. Accepting new possibilities can be a real learning curve, and it can broaden with new horizons. Right now, my body's adjusting to the rhythms of feedings every 2 hours. I can choose to fight that my life now has become this, or I can accept and find joy in growing baby cheeks, as well as endurance in the sleepless hours. The world will change in the coming decades. There's no doubt about it. Don't surrender to the disasters and corrupt politicians. No. Surrender to the new works of social change already showing us hope and possibility. Amen.